All right, go ahead, Patty.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today. We're going to do the first time of doing a Facebook Live book review on Convene Communities. So I'm super excited that all of you have been the first people to jump on the panel. I have Matt Curran, I have Eugene Brown, I have the Bynums, Alex is here, Megan's here, and Ellen. So thank you all for joining us on this first live book review. So how's everybody doing this morning? If you don't mind just telling us your first names and where you are.
Well, I'm Eugene Brown. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I am certainly happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Kim, and this is
JT.
And we are in Jacksonville, Florida.
Great.
I'm Megan. I'm from Winston-Salem, but I'm currently at UNC Chapel Hill.
Nice.
I'm Alex, and I'm in Austin, Texas.
I'm Ellen. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida.
And I'm Matt, and I'm in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Matt, for hosting us today. This is fantastic. It's an experience, so I'm super excited to be doing this over the next several weeks. So the book we're discussing is the book that I wrote this year called Renew and Restore, How to Communicate, Connect, and Celebrate to Your Best Self. Yeah, I love everybody that has it. So today we're just going to be reviewing the first chapter. So as all of you know, you've read the first chapter, and I use the river analogy not only in the first chapter, but through the entire book. Would love to have each of you, chime in and tell me what the river analogy means to you, how it's affected your life, if it means anything to you.
Well, Patty, first, why don't we do this? Tell us what, just so people get the overview and people know, talk about what you were thinking when you wrote it and why, and give the audience an overview, maybe who hasn't read
right.
book yet, and hopefully everybody should go, and there'll be a link on here to where you can come in and order the book, but just tell us a little bit about the backdrop of the river and how this all came about.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Matt. So when I went to go write the book was actually going to have an entire different flavor. And working through the book, it became obvious that I really needed to talk about my own life, introduce myself to people. So I grew up in Reno, Nevada, where the Truckee River runs through it. And most of my life was spent somewhere on the river or somewhere on the water, either at Lake Tahoe, on the Truckee River. Done a lot of river rafting trips throughout my life, camping. And the river has always been important to me. It's that place that I gain strength. I always can tell that the river has whirlpools and there's craziness swirling around. And I've seen clear water where it's just easy to just kind of move along. And as I looked back over my life, I think that's how my life has been. I've been found behind a boulder where things have been hard and dramatic for me, and I don't think that I can move. And I've also seen the beautiful joys of being on a blue day and bright blue skies where waters have been calm and life has seemed easy. And I've also seen the rapids where it just seems so fast that I can't get out of the rapids. So I usually use the analogy of the river, that it really does focus back on my life and all the experiences that I have had.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'll jump in first and I'll just talk about, and then we can just go around the room. But yeah, life is like a river. Patty, you and I talk about this all the time. Life is full of ups and downs. And, it's not just, we talked about early on when we first went over the book, that page and that analogy of, we all think it's just going to be a straight line, and people maybe have seen this picture of a straight line. Our plan, up to heaven is a straight line, and then God's plan is it's all over the place, and with valleys and water and everywhere, and life is,
Come here.
life is not always
Riley
easy.
says hi.
Yeah. So life is not always easy, and throughout life we go through those ups and downs, and I'll just talk about a little one for me as really that bases all my training. My family knows about this well. Everybody else knows about this well. But it's when I lost my combat crew chief in July 9th of 2001. It was a dramatic point where I lost a close friend of mine, and it kind of changed my thought process on everything, on how I make decisions, on everything that I do. And so when you're talking about where we're at today and and convene and all the stuff that we do, it's based off of, I believe we share our stories for the good of others, because I think we all walk parallel paths. And so when you wrote the book and when I read the book, and I read the chapter, it's easy for somebody to apply it to their own life. And so
Yeah.
that's what I think is pretty cool about it. And so I kind of go back to that one. It's just, life's not easy. You're going to go through ups, you're going to go through downs, but no matter how low you get, there's always an up. And I think, again, not trying to turn everything to today's perfect, time of COVID-19, but this is a tough time,
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are going through some low times, over 20 million people have lost their job, so there's a lot of distress in the country, but no matter how low it is, there's always an upside. So,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cool. I wanted to kind of comment, Matt, and just piggyback off what you said. Patty, when I picked up the book, Renew and Restore, How to Communicate, Connect, and Celebrate with Your Best Self, for me, I was like, okay, this is cool. This is something that, this was pre-COVID, but I was really like, okay, I'm going to get into this and see how this can kind of help me. And I was expecting the not typical, but I was expecting okay, so I know Patty's a therapist and she's going to give me this book and this recipe and these steps to do these things so that I can kind of, reset myself. And so it was so, I don't know, refreshing or so a little bit disarming that when I read the preamble and you talk about the river, and then when you really dug in chapter 1 into your life and sharing, and this is how I was going to feedback on what Matt said, I just didn't expect the therapist, the one helping me, to be willing to be so vulnerable to share your experiences and share your journey of life. And like Matt said, one, I could immediately relate. And I was like, yeah, I'm reading the rest of this book because this lady's not trying to just come across as, I've got the recipe for fixing your life because I've got my act together and you're you. But Matt, to your point, just the fact that we learn and we relate through people's shared experiences. And so, Patty, for you to be willing to be so vulnerable, so publicly about your journey, and to create this analogy that we can all kind of go, okay, well, let me look at my river. Let me look at my stuff the way that you explained your stuff. But I'm a big Brene Brown fan. And so,
Yeah.
The act of your vulnerability, and Brene says that vulnerability is like a sacred gift. And so I just wanted to thank you for that first chapter and for being willing to just put yourself out there and say, hey, I've had this life. It's been like a river. And now that you see that I'm willing to share that, do that same reflection for yourself, and then kind of, wind it through and see and relate it to you and how that helps you. So it's just super powerful for me to kind of take a walk down, memory lane of, okay, here's my life. Here's what I thought these things were horrible. And then God turned them around for good. And then I mucked this up and, and I created some turbulence, so all of those things I just thought were really cool. So thank you for that. And I think this analogy is super powerful, and I can't wait to hear other people's stories for how they kind of use the analogy themselves.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim.
Stemming off of that, I think that it was really beneficial for you to start off with a chapter where you're opening yourself up like that, especially with a book like this. I think it's really easy to go into a book like this not feeling connected to the author at all when you've never met them and you've never had face-to-face contact with them. And this is something that you're asking of your reader to dive into themselves and take a hard look at their past trials and tribulations. But I think that because you started off being vulnerable and sharing your story, it gives the reader a chance to think, okay, well, she's at a really great place in her life. I can do the same. And I feel connected to her in a way, even though we haven't actually met face to face. So I think that was a really great choice on your part.
Oh, thanks, Megan.
I agree, Megan. I've met Patty. I've known Patty, we've interacted many times, but still there's so much more information that I gained from her, and seeing that, her river wasn't a smooth ride this whole way, because you do meet Patty now and you're like, oh, she's got it all together. Everything's going great. And you actually find out, there's been turbulence, there's been some rough rapids, and it's okay. We can come out the other side.
Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah, I would say that I've only met you, Patty, obviously once in person,
Yeah.
And it was an enjoyable meeting. So it was good to meet you. But the being a father and having 4 children, and I have 3 daughters that are 10, 7, and 5, just kind of, you know, putting a face to the first chapter and starting to visualize you as a young 6-year-old going through what you went through, and some of the language that was in there, such as, you know, you felt like you're the reason why your father left, or he always left people at this stage. You know, I couldn't imagine like my daughters thinking daddy didn't want to be with them. That's the reason why he left. You know, it really captured me right out of the gate. So I thought it was well done in the first chapter. So hopefully the rest of the chapters will be good, because I hadn't had a chance to read it yet beyond chapter 1.
I'll press you on that one, Eugene.
Yes,
Go
come
on
back
more.
next Friday.
I thought the river analogy was really interesting, and for me, I think it's actually more applicable if you turn around and look at your river after you've rafted down it, so to speak. And we kind of had this happen this week. I've had an opportunity that I've been pursuing over the past 6 months or so, and we're finally kind of to the finish line. And my partners and I were joking that by the time this agreement went to draft, from then until today, the world is literally a different place. And, you know, there were so many rocks and stones and you know, rapids or whatever analogy you want to use in between then and now. And you turn around and you're like, wow, that was quite a ride that we just took to get to where we are. And I think there's so many different streams that break off of the river. And when you can take time to turn around and look at how you got to where you are today, I think it's a very applicable analogy.
Yeah, and I also thank you all very much. You know, this is the first time. Please join in. I'm sorry, I didn't even know you had read the book. So absolutely, join in here.
Yeah, I was going to say about the analogy. I thought that it was the constant flow. You talked about how, you know, the river winds over the boulder, and and that's life. It just keeps going. So the analogy of the river was that you're going to keep going. You know, what you've already. I thought of it as being on the river, not the river. And as you go down the river, once you've already made past that other bend, that's gone. You got to look forward to the next one. And I also thought about, because I grew up in Tennessee and we had a lot of rivers, but and a lot of times you come up to like the fork in the road, you know, and we'd have rivers that merge, and you'd have to choose, hey, which way am I going to go? And I thought about that as like you were talking about how you made your decision, you know, to go back to school, and just kind of that, you know, it's that path. You make your decisions, you go forward, and if you can't turn around and fight that current back, you know.
Yeah. I love that. You know, it's fun to have, again, a panel. I don't think I've ever had an open discussion about the book. So it's interesting to hear everybody's perspectives, and I appreciate it. I must admit, I got a few tears in my eyes, because it's just interesting to hear how the book has affected somebody, how opening my life up, which it was not going to be a plan until I got into the book. So it's really important that I hear that. It's interesting too that somebody wrote me this week, you know, all of you are on this panel for the very first time, and somebody wrote me this week and I didn't recognize her name at all, and she asked if she could join this panel on certain chapters, and I didn't recognize the name in anybody in my world. And so I wrote back to her and certainly invited this person and asked where she had heard about the book, and she had learned about it from a friend and is going through some life changes and going through a very difficult time. And she said she's now read the book 3 times and that it is keeping her afloat. And, you know, as the writer, I sit there and go, what's keeping you afloat? Like, it's just an interesting, you don't even realize that you have an effect on somebody's life that you don't know, or people that I know or just have met. So I appreciate each of your points of view. Is there anything that you all were either more curious about, or how you see, like Alex, I see that you applied the river analogy in the last couple of weeks about what you've been going through. What about the rest of you? Is there an area in your life, or is there a question that you have for me out of this first chapter?
I have a question.
Sure.
So Patty, and this is, and this kind of speaks to what you're just saying about this lady reaching out to you and saying that this book is helping her stay afloat. But I'm going back to you more, and kind of what JT said about when the fork's in the road and you have or in the river and you have a decision. Why do you think it is that some people are able to, like, you were like, okay, this stuff happened to me, but I'm going to pick up and I'm making this decision and I'm going this way on the fork. Why are some people able to do that more easily? Or I don't know if it's easy, but they're able to do it, period. And then other people, I feel like they just let the river just freaking go, drown them. And they just like, oh, this is just what's going to happen. And life just happens. And they never get to where they feel like they're in control of picking the fork in the road. So, you were able to do that. And I think that, other people are able to do that, but a lot of people aren't. And I think even in COVID now, I see the different reactions of people and how they're responding. What is it that makes people like that? And how can somebody that can't do it very well get to be able to kind of take this river and ride it and navigate it so that they feel successful, fulfilled, and all that stuff?
First of all, I think I had a great experience with my mom, to be honest. She really taught me at an early age to be strong. I've always been one of those people who comes to the fork in the road, fork in life, and can move through into a different direction without regret. It's been my goal not to have regret. I don't think I get down a path when it is the wrong path, that I sit there and beat myself up about this being the wrong path. To me, it's go as long as I can until there's another fork, and then I need to make another choice. So for me, I've been down many paths that I don't think have been good ones for me. I think, though, that I had great fundamentals as a child to trust my instincts. I don't think that we teach people, men or women, how to listen to their instinct. Everybody has it differently. Some people listen to their gut. Some people feel it in their head. And one of the goals is to teach people, the young people, Megan, Alex's, to listen to that gut. Try to tune in and learn whether that's telling you the truth. God gave us an instinct, and we just haven't learned to hone in on it. So I also think that we haven't been really great in this country about being willing to open ourselves up and ask questions. We have to create safe spaces so that all of us can come to a forum like this and be willing to put ourselves out there. And so part of the book, as most of you know, if you've read through it, is to create that safe space that anybody can come talk to us about things, that I can go to certain people and talk about it. So to me, it's about learning to be able to be willing to be vulnerable, and to be able to learn to take in and ask for help. As you most know, and especially through this first chapter, I don't like asking for help. Welcome to being human. And that's the number one thing I've learned. I have to raise a hand and say I'm struggling. Anybody else? That's a great question. These questions aren't just for me. So anybody else?
I got an analogy to draw Alex and Megan in here a little bit. And one of the first ways, Patty, that you and I connected, and this will draw JT and Kim in here too. One of the first ways that you and I connected was talking about sports, parenting and sports. And so Alex, you played college basketball.
Sure.
Right. Megan was a high level dancer who could have gone and easily danced in college if she wanted to. And then Braden, our son, was a college soccer player, kind of like you, Alex. He went and played at a D3 school. And then y'all's daughter was a high level gymnast, right? That just made a decision to kind of step back from it. So Patty, talk a little bit about that. And then I'll talk after you talk about what you told me about you and Alex. And Alex, you can jump in on this. I'll talk about Megan and Braden, then we can have JT and Kim talk about Tess, because I think, today, sometimes we put so much pressure on life and we're looking at it and there's so much focus on these high level sports and all the things that we can do. And guess what? I'm a retired baseball player, college baseball player, meaning that it all comes to an end, but we put so much focus and pressure and all that. But this is one of the ways that you and I connected, Patty. And I love
Yeah.
the story, but it really goes back into us as parents stepping back and really taking our kids, what they want into consideration.
Yeah. So are you referring to the choice of where Alex went? Yeah. So, and Alex, I shared the story that when you were trying to choose where you were gonna go for basketball, that you had choices of D1 schools, D2 schools, and you and I having the conversation of you selecting.
I didn't have that many choices.
But
you had choices. But going to Eckerd, and I remember you telling me that day, and I said, hey, I really thought the dream was D1. And I remember you looking at me and saying, Mom, my dream is to play basketball. It's your dream that maybe you have to give up your dream. And you might not remember that conversation, but it was so poignant to me that, wow, I had gotten wrapped up in that whole thing. And for you, I believe it was, the river I'm on is to go play basketball. I just want to be the best I can be wherever it is. Join in this conversation, Alex. I
don't remember that conversation.
I knew that.
Specifically, but, no, I mean, for me, I was blessed and cursed that all of the pressure that ever came from sports was from myself. And it definitely was to my detriment for sure. But at the same time, there was no resentment. I never burnt out. I never did any of those things that you hear so often with kids that are funneled into these programs where they spend however many months every year doing the same thing. And most of them, it's probably not their choice. I'm blessed that wasn't ever a situation for me. And for me, the college decision was really about a place that I felt that I was going to be comfortable, that I was going to be valuable. And I really didn't enjoy the recruiting process at all. And it was an opportunity to end that as quickly as possible. So all those things kind of combined to a decision that ended up being a great one for me. And just like anything else in life, you go somewhere new and become a part of a new team, group, business, whatever it is. It's kind of, you're going to create new relationships, and hopefully some of those, if not all of them, last for quite a while. That's something that I was fortunate enough to experience, but no, I don't remember that specific.
Well, that's probably a good thing. It sounds to me, Alex, like Patty your mom let you navigate through that whole thing. And I'm just saying there's probably a lot of parents, and Megan, maybe you can tell your dad, I don't know how he is as a dad with sports, but I know he's pretty competitive and hardcore when he's coaching the soccer team. But Alex, I feel like that's really a blessing that your mom wasn't in there in your business as you were navigating that decision about basketball and kind of pinging you.
I actually committed before telling either of my parents. That's a true story. And
you are smart.
See, this is what things reveal. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I committed in my basketball coach's office in high school on the phone, and then called my parents and told them that. And they both had different reactions, but yeah, I just did it.
And Alan, we're going to go to Megan, but then I want you to pull in because you have a daughter that's not going to be able to graduate this year due to the COVID-19. So let's go over and hear Megan, but I really, want to pull you in this conversation because it's current and you're dealing with a whole different set of struggles in your river. So Megan, let's hear from you.
Well, I was very involved with dancing and all my life thought that that's what I wanted to do, that I wanted to go to college for it. And I think I probably would say that I did reach a point of burnout where I was dancing probably 20 to 25 hours a week. And it got to my junior year of high school and I was like, I just don't think that I can do this for the rest of my life, which was a difficult decision for me to make, to say the least, because I realize now more than anything, being in college, how much of a bubble I lived in high school. My life revolved around three things: my family, school, and dance. So that's also something that I would relate to the river analogy. Those problems that I experienced dancing and just in high school, and the challenges that I faced then, I look back on now and I'm like, those seem somewhat small, like little rocks in the river compared to the global pandemic that we're going through right now. So I think that's a really interesting perspective to have. But coming from a child's perspective, my dad always says this quote that makes me roll my eyes every time he says it. He says, "You just have to make a decision." That's his go-to quote is, "Well, Megan, you just have to make a decision." He says about everything. It can be about where we're going to eat dinner for that night, what movie we're going to see, anything. But that was one decision, big decision I had to make with my life, was deciding whether or not I wanted to pursue a more academic career. And my goal is to go to medical school. So I knew that it was not really possible for me to do both, to be a dancer in college and then also have these goals that involve, putting yourself 100% into your academics. So I think that was definitely one of the more life-changing decisions I've had to make in my life.
Yeah.
She just made it.
But I'm really thankful that I had parents that let me completely navigate that on my own. I don't know how it would be different, what my brother would say about that, because I think that my dad might have been a little more strong-willed about soccer than dance, but
we'll see if we can get him on.
Let me touch on Braden real quick though, but I think this goes real quick to Alex. Alex, the advice I gave to my son, because he was like you, he just wanted to play and wanted to be involved. And he was getting recruited by D1, D2, D3, but he was also 5'7", 130 pounds. And so his decision was, my advice to him as somebody who played college baseball was, go somewhere and play, go somewhere and enjoy it, because you got about 4 years to play, and then you're going to become retired and you're going to be coaching and you're going to be pouring into your kids one day. And so he went and he was played a starter for 4 years and was a 2-year captain, and so he was on the field playing all the time rather than sitting the bench watching the game, waiting for junior and senior year to try to work in. So that was my really advice to him, that to help him navigate is, don't worry about the D1, D2. You're not going to the MLS. Let's be honest. Just go play. My best memories from college is playing baseball. That's what I still think about. It was no pressure for him to be at that high level, because the high level of, continuing past that is unrealistic, really, if we're being honest. And so just enjoy it. Enjoy your time that you get to play. And that's what it's all about. So
Ellen, I'm going to bring you in here, because as I'm sitting here listening, and I love the perspective of Alex and Megan talking about decisions and forks in the roads. And I'm sitting here, and you and I've had some conversations back and forth. Do you feel like you're stuck behind a boulder? Are you stuck in a whirlpool right now because the entire year for your daughter has been snatched away due to this? And I know you all are experiencing some real difficulties right now, or I can only imagine. So
yeah, I start tearing up because it all came down. She had prom scheduled for like the 21st of March. So that was canceled. And we're like, okay, that's okay. We can handle that. We have another one in April. This may be resolved, and the river just kept flowing. It was like slowly, but because you kept waiting for answers and information. And like yesterday, like you said, it's kind of like the boulder just landed right in the middle of our river. We got the notice that graduation will not be happening. It will be a virtual graduation, which, yes, thank you. You're, acknowledging, but it's definitely not the same as walking across the stage, getting to, recognition by your administrators and having your family there to support you. It's not the same. And I think we both just sat down and cried at that thought, when people were like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. There's more things going on. But honestly, it's a huge loss.
That's your world. Yes.
It is our world. And you kept kind of expecting this to come, but you kept holding out hope. And it's like, finally, once that hope was snatched, you really start grieving the loss of it. And more friends of ours found out yesterday that some of their high schools will be doing the same thing. And so we're all kind of just rallying around each other. And it's now trying to kind of keep the river flowing around the boulder. Okay, what are we going to do now? What's our next plans? How can we, try to make up for this, even though it won't be the best, but it's the best we can do with the situation we have, and she has goals to, get her doctorate in psychology. So do we have plenty more graduations to come? Absolutely. But, this high school graduation is just kind of like that movement from childhood to adulthood. It's really kind of representative of that. And that's really been.
And that's, my heart is warmed by that, because it's one of those things that we talk through. And I think Alex alluded to it earlier. Sometimes you have to get down the river a little bit to be able to look back and see what effect this had on your life or how it played. And that'll certainly run true. But, I think it's so interesting to listen to all of you. You're talking about exactly what that first chapter is these things that come along and really affect you. And I'm moved by your tears, Ellen, because I think one of the things that I always talk about is not to compare yourself to anybody else as, oh, somebody else has it harder. One of the things as a psychotherapist, I try to always emphasize is, please don't do that. That undervalues exactly what you feel. It doesn't matter that anybody else's plight is worse. Yours right now is painful and hard, and you're in a whirlpool, and that tugs at my heartstrings.
Yeah. Hey, Alan, I got a question for you. I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day, and they're in the same situation. His son, is a senior baseball season's over, no graduation, over. They're trying to, whenever this opens up, no matter how late it is, they're trying to come together as parents and rally and give them a senior prom, even if it's in July or August, just because that's something you can't get back. You can't pull back that senior prom, no matter who you are. So I didn't know.
Graduation.
Yeah, our graduation. Yeah. I mean, who cares when it is? If it's late, it's late. But just do something to allow those kids to not, go through life and be 30, 40 and be like, well, yeah, we're one of those. We're one of those, people that never got a senior prom, never got our graduation and all that. So just a thought, but that's what they're trying. That's up here in High Point, North Carolina. A school is there. The parents are trying to rally and starting to plan their own, prom for people.
Alex and Megan, talk a second about, for each of you, if Alex, if you can remember back to high school graduation, like, do you look back at that as a fond memory, and can you relate to Ellen's daughter not being able to do that?
I think definitely. I think in the moment it seems, graduating from high school is the biggest accomplishment you've made in that moment. So having a place to go and be with your peers and your teachers and your family is a really big deal. Waking up and putting on the cap and gown I think it definitely is a big deal. And I think that it's definitely difficult that it's not happening this year. And I hope that there are steps that people can take to, still celebrate those seniors, whether it be because I have a more firsthand account right now of the college seniors that are kind of going through the same thing. They're being thrust into the real world, some of them without jobs, not getting to live out their last spring in college, which has got to be so hard, especially for athletes who have, had their final season stripped away from them. I know talking to Braden was saying that he couldn't imagine not being able to play his final season. So it is, I think high school prom in a grand scheme of things might not seem like the biggest deal. When you're in that situation, it is your world, and that's what's being taken away from you. So I completely agree, and not to compare it to other people's situations, because yes, somebody's always probably going to have it worse, but that doesn't mean that your feelings are any less valid.
Alex.
Yeah, I think it'll actually be interesting to kind of take like a positive spin on this. I think it's really interesting how many kids across the country are going to have this shared experience for the rest of their lives. Like, oh yeah, we were the kids that were supposed to
Wow.
graduate in 2020. And, you know, they'll be 15 years from now and they'll realize that they just met somebody new, and then they'll be able to talk about how they were supposed to graduate, and oh yeah, I lived in California and I was supposed to graduate and I didn't get to do it too. So I think it'll be really interesting to see like how this experience kind of unifies not a generation but a year of students, both at the college and at the high school level. College graduation, I barely made it to mine, and it wasn't canceled. So, you know,
would you like to tell that story, Alex?
No, I don't want to tell that story. That's not.
I'll be happy to.
Doesn't need that one.
Well, I was telling Kim just the other day that this is kind of like for our kids, this is like the storm of '77, when we were all out of school for weeks, and all through my life, you know, as I would talk to people from other areas, we would always talk about that storm and how everybody was at home. And so it's kind of like, this is more widespread than that.
Right.
But it's that kind of same thing. But I was going to go back to another thing you were talking about, how some things you think are, they're not as important because there's other important things. And Kim and I have a mentally and physically disabled son.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I would talk to people, and I could tell they would get into a story of something, and I could tell they would always pull themselves back because they would feel like, oh, this is so insignificant to what you're going, you know. They'd talk about my kids. I caught my kids drinking, and they'd be like, well, oh, you know, I know that's nothing compared to what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But I would tell them, I was like, no, you know, because that's what you're dealing, you know, that's important to you. That's the most important thing in your life because that's your kid. So no, it's not to our level, but in your life, that is something that's, you know,
this is big.
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any questions that anybody has of me at the first chapter, or anything else that we can kind of jump off of? There are a few things, you know, there's the codependency part. There's, you know, I was just kind of looking through here and just curious if you guys had any questions of me that you would like answered, because I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I'll ask you one. So, you know, I believe that our life experiences shape who we are. And this is really what chapter 1 is about, and the preamble and all that. So just, I mean, how do you feel that those early life experiences made you, or still affect you? That's a better question. Still affect you to who you are today? Like how does all of those different things that you like from your early childhood to, you know, the different things that you've gone through, how do you feel that they have shaped you, that made you who you are, made you the counselor that you are, made you the empathetic person that you are?
I think that I've really had, it was eye-opening to go back and look at the book and decide to jump in and reevaluate and to tell people openly that I had an eating disorder. I know for most of my family, they never even knew that. I got a lot of calls. I don't think a lot of people knew that I was the one who walked in and found my father after he died by suicide. I shouldn't say died, he lived for 3 years, and that's part of the story. So part of it is the resilience that I think people form. Again, it was how to reach out and get help. And that's one of the things that I think I love being a therapist for, is teaching people that it is okay. Let's erase the stigma that it's not okay to tell somebody that they're hurting. We did a podcast the other day, and it's, do we have that space where you can call somebody and say, I'm not okay today. I'm not feeling it today. I'm feeling sad today, or I'm upset. So that's one of the things that I think is so important to learn. I think it's faced me that I know now after my life's experiences. We almost lost Alex when he was little. He went through some life-changing surgeries, and I think losing my dad at a relatively young age, both as a child through divorce and then through his suicide. Throw anything at me, I got it. You can't throw anything at me anymore that I don't think I can handle, even if it's still raw and devastating. I've learned through that I will be able to pick myself up. I will be maybe in a whirlpool, but somebody will come along and push me along and help me and guide me through that next set of rivers. So I think it's about resilience. I hope that's what this story and my book helps create, is that go through life, reach out to this panel of people that are around you, ask for help when you need it. Don't be ashamed about that. That's something we need to learn how to do.
Yeah. Can I jump over to Eugene? Because Eugene, relate to that story that Patty just talked about, because we've talked about your brother and your mom and all that a lot in our friendship.
Yeah, I've been sitting there thinking about it a little bit. My little brother died at 29. He had diabetes. He drank like a fish. There were certain things that ailed him. I think it was the divorce of my mother and father, the relationship that he no longer had with my dad as far as proximity. Some of the things that he went through, I don't think he ever really overcame them, which resulted in him not taking care of his body, despite the fact that he had diabetes. And then my mother, through her challenges, marriages, divorces, things that have happened to her, she ended up dying at 58. She had congestive heart failure, diabetes, dementia, just a whole host of problems with a sad ending. Watching her die in the hospital and being her power of attorney, telling the doctors, just don't give her any dopamine, just turn the machine off. If she can't breathe on her own, then it's her time to go. So just some of those things, how I get through stuff, not that we're asking, is my faith in God, and the principles that are in the Bible, such as, that God won't put more on you than you could bear, and knowing and believing and practicing and truly understanding those things, it will get you through it. And whether it be other things that you may read, like Patty's book, where you can relate to certain chapters and certain things that she's given you from an advice standpoint. You take those things in and you make them part of who you are. And I'll give you another quick example, because it came up in my mind. There's a book called The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. And I'm sitting here just looking at one of his quotes, and it says, and this has always stuck with me, it says, "Life is difficult. This is a great truth. One of the greatest truths. It is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we transcend it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult, because once it is accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters." You try to share those things with people, at least throughout my journey, to try to get them to understand that life is difficult. And just like you said earlier, there are going to be certain rivers that will go down. Sometimes they'll be rocky, sometimes they'll be smooth. But once you understand that the river is going to have its ups and downs, the fact that the river is going to have all of the ups and downs no longer matters to you. When you come to that fork in the road, like JT was saying, if it's a big boulder in Tennessee, you're either going to make a choice to go this way or you're going to go this way. And you're going to live with that choice, and you're going to navigate through it. So, it's just your book, the first chapter has, got me thinking this morning. I probably don't need to be thinking too much this morning, because I don't like thinking that much.
That's funny.
Anyone else?
I was going to say, maybe this is, I don't want to be Debbie Downer or make it seem negative, but I think that we have to acknowledge the fact, or I've acknowledged the fact that some of the things that have happened to me in my childhood and throughout my life, some of the similar things that you shared, Patty, that they have impacted me, and not all for good, right? So they have, I think there's things that have happened in my life that can cause some, ingrained behaviors, or make me react a certain way, or make me, triggers, some people call them. And I think that, we talk about the river and making choices and, being resilient, but, I just want to acknowledge, and I just want you to kind of talk a little bit, if you will, and you guys can too. But I mean, when, like, for example, My mom took off a couple of days before my 8th birthday, and we didn't have contact for a lot of years. No matter what, no matter how resilient, no matter how successful, no matter how whatever, there's a piece and part of that that stuck with me, that impacted me, that makes me behave a certain way, or not in the good way, right? Or makes me have these feelings of abandonment or whatever. And even, I have awareness of them, but sometimes it still doesn't matter. And that's just one example of many that have messed me up, or make me act ways that I don't want to act. Let me say that. But how do you get through that part of it? I mean, we can't, we can say, hey, I'm just going to overcome that. But what do you do, Patty, with somebody that they've had the experience, it's impacted them, changed them, and now it's causing behaviors that I don't want to have, I don't want to do, but I keep having them and I keep doing them because of the river that I've traveled down so far.
And Ellen, I think you can help join in on this one as well. And Matt is a therapist. And I think for me, I learned that once I learned those things and how they affected me, I'm what they call a schema therapist. So I go back and I learn how to connect dots. So that's a fascinating experience to me. And that's why I think knowledge is power. When I can go back and realize that my father's leaving meant that people leave me all the time. That is something I fight all the time. If somebody doesn't call me, my instant go-to is, oh, that person doesn't like me. They don't want to call me. And I have to have that conversation with self that's like, no, you've worked on that. That's not true. That's yesterday's story. And so that's one of those things, I think, when you learn and experience life and know that those are your things, I've learned to take a deep breath and calm myself back down. I teach my clients how to do that as well. And I think it's to acknowledge that those things live in us, that affect us, and that we have to be open to being able to talk about it. One of the things that I'm also very open with my clients is tell your story until it no longer has any power over you, because it's often because we've kept this story inside. It was horrible to write this first chapter for me. I was stopped in my tracks many times with very tearful days that I couldn't do the book anymore. Like, how am I going to approach that? But I think learning to tell your story to somebody that you're close to, that you can be part of, and they're part of your story, and you can tell that story as much as you possibly can until it loses strength, is also really super important. Ellen, what do you want to chime in on that one?
We going through the healing process of losing a friend to suicide, it really, me and his wife would just share the story and talk about it over and over again. Because like you said, I mean, it's coming to terms with it, understanding it, how's it impacting us, and where are we going from that? And now I can hear other stories without having to share mine or input mine. I can just listen fully and openly to them.
Yeah.
So I'll say this, that's what Convene is all about, right? That's why we're here, because again, I think that we've all gone through more similar stories than we even realize. We've all walked similar paths more than we realize. And it's so important that we learn from each other's experiences. And when I go down that path, and again, I'm going to relate back to your book, when you go down the path and you read Patty's story, you're able to take that and relate it back to your life. And you're able to say, okay, well, Patty's sharing her story. Well, I can share my story in a way, but I can learn from Patty, and I can see how Patty was down here at this end, and now she got here, and she came to the other side. And that's really what it's all about, is share your stories, share your experiences in life, because look, we've all been through some pretty low, we've all been through some pretty bad times, but I don't want to always focus on the low or the bad times, because we've also been through some good times, right? We've also been through some great times. So those are just as important to share as the negative ones. And so I think if we just come together, we share our stories. I know, Megan, you and Braden and Lainey and Tisha, my wife, y'all hear my story. I tell stories constantly, right? And I'm always telling a story, always telling stories, because I relate it back to, hey, you know, this is what happened to me. This is how I transitioned through it. This is how you can transition through it, you know, because I don't like seeing, when you talk, Ellen, about suicide, I've lost some friends to suicide. I've lost anybody who's in the military has lost friends to suicide. We might be at the low of lows, but you're at the low point. You can get past that. You can get to the high. It's temporary, you know? So I agree with you. And I think that's what your book does so good. I'm looking forward to the rest of the chapters, because we're going to transition through it. And as we transition through it, we're going to see really kind of how it moves through it. And that's really how each and every one of us can move through. You might be in a tough spot, not to pick on Megan, but you know, all my kids, they're very academic. When they're in that high stress time of an exam, when they're building up to that test, they're in that moment and their life is really stressed out. You'll talk to Megan and Megan will be like, I don't have time to talk, Dad, I got to study, you know? And so she's really stressed out. Right. And then you'll this is picking on her. Right. But you'll call her. She's like, I'm not ready for the test. I'm not going to do good. This is going to be a horrible exam. I can't talk. Don't have time to talk. Hey, Megan, how'd you do? Well, I got a 94, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes me
not always the case.
So let me do this, because I know we're coming upon the hour and I got to be really respectful of everybody's work hours and all that type of thing. So, you know, just in a sentence or two, if each of you would just take a second and make a final comment here, and then I'll finish it up and we'll get out of here. So let's just kind of go around the room. Let's start over with the Vinans. Any final thoughts? Just one or two with you guys.
I was like, what? I just, you know, I just really appreciate everybody on the panel being willing to come together and just kind of give a review of your first chapter, Patty, and to give you some feedback, which I'm sure is gratifying, but also the fact that everybody's just willing to kind of share who they are and where their heart is right now. You know, we're virtual, but I still feel like there's that connection, and that's been really cool.
Nice. JT?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to, you know, we're talking about, hey, you know, you get low and you got to focus on the, you know, different things and move on. But a little bit about me, I'd had some issues medical wise. And some of that stuff is real, you know, the getting past it. Like I had chemical imbalances and I was really messed up. And a lot of times, I mean, it was to get through day to day was just, I mean, I literally thought, actually, I cannot go another day like this. So it is moving on, but you also got to make sure that you are medically sound too when you get in those situations. Because I didn't know what was going on. The doctors didn't know. And that even, and it builds, because I knew something was wrong. They couldn't find anything wrong. They kept on handing me antidepressants, and I was just like, then you start questioning yourself. You're like, wow, you know, am I just really depressed, or you know, it's you get in a swirl, and it's
hard to move on.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Megan.
I would say the same thing. I'm just grateful to have this as sort of an escape from all that's going on, and to be able to read a book that's applicable to the situation, but also applicable to things that we've already dealt with in our lives and will deal with in the future. And as from the perspective of somebody younger, I'm really excited to learn these lessons from this book and be able to apply them in the coming years. Thanks. And just grateful to have new friends.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Eugene.
I would just say, you know, we're embarking on a little journey here on a book called Renew and Restore. And my comments would be to Ellen. You know, you have an opportunity to renew your daughters or your organization, your community's opportunity to be able to have those children, to what Matt was saying, have a graduation, have a prom, so you can renew what they're potentially losing, and they'll probably will lose, and restore something, on the other hand, from a good event that they're going to remember. Hey, it was taken away, but my mom championed the event where we had a prom and we had a walkthrough. So I really, that really has to get done, for that narrative, that experience through this whole thing.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Ellen.
Hey, so just to really quick let you know, so after my 5-minute crying session, I immediately got on the phone with a friend of mine that's a carpenter, and I said, I need a stage. I need it this big by this
I love
wide.
you.
I contacted my supervisor. I said, will you be the MC? So at Michaela's graduation party, which will be the end of May, God willing, we will have a graduation for her and her friends that are there. My boss is going to be the MC. She'll have a stage. So we're rolling on that. Prom is on the back burner right now. She's like, I just want prom pictures and I'm good. I'm like, okay, we can do that.
Yeah, cool.
But I think I just really want to say, Matt, you really reminded me, it's easy to focus on the negatives or the boulders or the struggles, but we really have to remember to focus to the positive and really pull those in our life and use them to help us grow too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Alex.
Yeah, this was just kind of a cool experience for me to see how many different walks of life, one analogy can be very relevant to, and really listen to a bunch of different stories and a lot of different people that are in a totally different space in life, no matter that we're all sharing this very unique set of circumstances that's going on globally and certainly domestically, but everybody is impacted by it in a different way. And Ellen, I think that's so cool that you can, again, it goes back to everything that we're told from the moment that we're born until wherever we are in life, that you can either you decide how you react to a situation. And I mean, literally just in one conference call here, you've made a decision that your daughter's not going to be negatively impacted, and that there can be a positive to come from a not positive situation. And so I think that's really cool. And if these reviews continue on in this fashion and something like that can happen on every one of these reviews, they'll be a pretty powerful instrument.
Yep. So
stop crying.
Yeah, no, I am crying. And I'm floored, I think. Talk, Pat.
All right. So here it is. Renew and restore. Okay. So I'm going to talk about this. Patty Mohler has become one of my best friends. We talk a lot on the weekly. And she's somebody that, I lean to, and I ask questions and I talk to her a lot about just life. And I think it's great. And Alex, you just said it, there's all walks of life. And I'm glad that we have, all walks of life on here, all different experiences from different parts of the country. But if you can't be on here, Patty has her own community and Convene, and each chapter will be broken down, and this video will be within that chapter. So you can still participate. You can still come in and answer questions, because we can still learn from each other, right? We can still learn, even if you're not on the call. We can't get everybody on the call, but go in, join our community, and go through this review. I mean, Patty, you're such a wonderful person. You're making a difference in so many people's lives. I truly appreciate you. There'll be a link to buy the book and inside of her group. But, you're just an inspiration to all of us that are on this call, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. And I look forward to every Friday morning because, Alex, you said it best. If we can make one difference every Friday, and we have truly made a difference across the board. And that's truly, when you look at what myself, Eugene, Kim, Patty, anybody that's involved in Convene, the goal of Convene is to make a difference in people's life. And Megan, of course, Megan's been involved since she was in diapers.
So I'll jump in here real quick. Thank you for taking that, because I really was kind of choked up. I just appreciate the all of you just joining in on this panel and being part of this first experience. We had different genders. We definitely had different age groups, and that's what I want from this. I want this all around general conversation. It's important to have. I love the fact that we leapfrog not just to what's in the book, but to your stories and hearing stories and what you all are experiencing. And that's the whole point of that. Those of you that are out there watching that, if you want to jump on the panel, instant message me. Would be happy to get you on there. We'll be doing this every single Friday at 9 a.m. We'll take it chapter for chapter. There's 7 chapters in the conclusion. So we'll put that 7th chapter and the conclusion together, but we'll be doing this every Friday. So, please join us. I invite the panel to come back. I hope you all come back. It's been eye-opening. We've never done this before. What an experience. I hope you all enjoyed it. It was fun for me to be doing it, and I appreciate all of your words, and each and every one of you have inspired me, and that's probably the reason I wrote the book. So thank you all very much.
All right, everybody, thank you for being on. This will be posted in chapter 1 in Renew and Restore in Convene Communities. And again, like Patty said, if you want to reach out to her, you reach out to her. You can private message her on Facebook, follow her. You can also do it with Inside of Convene if you follow her. But we just appreciate everybody being on today and taking the time, on this Friday morning to absolutely make a difference in people's lives out there. So thanks a lot.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye.